The Starclaw's engines thrummed steadily, a gritty hum that Marcus Hale found grounding after years of deep space missions. He sat at the helm, his broad frame hunched over the NAV screen, plotting the jump to Zorathis. The mission was straightforward. Escort Princess Vera, a Gauian noble carrying vital Dominion intel, to a hidden outpost on the death world Zorathis. Straightforward, that is, until you factored in the princess herself. Vera sprawled across the co-pilot's seat, her black fur gleaming under the console's pale light. Her green eyes, sharp as a predator's, flicked over the cockpit with disdain. Her tail lashed, thumping the armrest like a drumbeat of impatience. "This vessel," she spat, her voice a mix of silk and venom, "is an insult to my status. Slower than a Gauian cub crawling through mud." She leaned forward, claws tapping the console, leaving faint scratches Marcus would have to buff out later. He kept his eyes on the screen, fingers steady on the controls. 4 hours to Zorathis, princess. Plenty of time to critique my ship. His tone was calm, but a faint edge betrayed his thinning patience. He'd faced plasma storms and hierarchy drones, but Vera's relentless complaints were a different beast. Vera's ears twitched, and she scoffed. 4 hours? On Gao, our shuttles would have arrived by now, and in style. She gestured at a dented panel, her nose wrinkling. This is no place for a princess. Do humans always travel in such filth? Her tail knocked a stray wrench to the floor, and she didn't bother picking it up. Marcus exhaled slowly, resisting the urge to snap. This ship's seen worse than your complaints, and still flies. It'll get us there. He glanced at her, catching a fleeting shadow in her eyes, something beyond arrogance, maybe unease about Zorathis' dangers. Her claws flexed, digging into the armrest, a small tell she likely didn't mean to show. Vera turned to the viewport, her reflection stark against the void. "Zorathis," she muttered, almost to herself. "A death world full of poison and beasts. A fitting punishment for enduring this journey." Her voice dripped with sarcasm, but her shoulders tensed, betraying a crack in her haughty facade. Marcus adjusted the autopilot, leaning back. "Zorathis is secure. Outpost is off-grid, perfect for your intel." He paused, choosing his words. "And you're not just any princess, Vera. You're here because you can handle it." A subtle challenge, testing if her pride would override her griping. Vera's eyes snapped to him, narrowing. "Save your human flattery, soldier. It's as worn as this ship." But her tail stilled, just for a moment, before she turned back to the stars, her silence louder than her complaints. As the Starclaw droned toward Zorathis, Marcus felt the weight of the mission settle in. Vera was no ordinary charge, and this was no ordinary job. The Starclaw lurched, its engines choking on their own mechanical death rattle. Marcus Hale wrestled the controls, his calloused hands steady despite the blaring alarms. Red lights pulsed across the console, screaming engine failure. "Hold on, princess," he growled, eyes locked on the NAV screen. Zorathis spun below, a death world of shimmering seas and golden dunes, its beauty a lie hiding poison. Marcus angled the ship toward a flat coastal strip, hoping the sand would soften their crash. Princess Vera, strapped into the co-pilot's seat, bared her fangs in a snarl. Her black fur stood on end, green eyes blazing with indignation. "This is your doing, human," she spat, her tail thrashing against the armrest. "Your pathetic ship dares to fail a Gauian princess." Her claws gouged faint marks into the seat, a sign of fury she didn't bother to hide. Marcus didn't flinch. "Yell later. Landing now." The Starclaw screamed through Zorathis' atmosphere, heat shields glowing like embers. The ship slammed into a dune with a bone-jarring crunch, skidding across sand that shimmered with faint, toxic light from bioluminescent algae. When it stopped, half buried, the cockpit fell silent, save for the distant roar of Zorathis' waves. Marcus unbuckled, checking his gear, rifle survival kit, toxin scanner. He glanced at Vera, who was already on her feet, brushing sand from her fur with exaggerated disdain. "This is an outrage," she hissed, her voice dripping venom. A princess, stranded on a death world. Where are we? And how do we escape this sandbox? Marcus scanned the horizon through the cracked viewport. The dune coast stretched endlessly, dotted with gnarled viper fruit trees, their red-purple fruits glowing seductively, and spike-thorn bushes, their spines catching the violet light. Zarketh, the Gallian capital city, was 20 kilometers inland, a hub with repaired docks and a distress beacon. "We head for Zarketh," Marcus said, slinging his pack. 20 clicks on foot. "We move fast, call for rescue, fix the ship." Vera's ears flattened, her tail flicking in disgust. "Walk through this wretched place? My fur will be ruined, and I'll smell of your human failure." She gestured at the dunes, her nose wrinkling at the sharp tang of toxic algae wafting from the sea. But her eyes lingered on a viper fruit tree, its sweet scent cutting through the air. She took a step toward it, then paused, a flicker of wariness crossing her face. Marcus caught the movement, his voice firm. "Don't even think about it, princess. Those fruits look tempting, but they're death in a bite. Zora, this doesn't play nice." He adjusted his scanner, checking for airborne toxins. Vera scoffed, tossing her head. "A Gowan's body is forged in harsher worlds than this. I'm not some frail human who needs warnings." Her claws flexed, but she stepped back from the tree, her pride warring with a buried instinct. "Just get us to Zarketh before I lose patience entirely." Marcus checked his rifle, hiding a wry smile. "Patience or not, stay behind me. This planet's got more ways to kill us than you've got complaints." He opened the hatch, letting in a gust of salty, toxic air. Vera followed, muttering about human incompetence, but her steps were cautious, her eyes scanning the dunes. As they prepared to move, the weight of Zoisa's dangers hung between them, heavier than her barbs. Princess Vera stepped out, her black fur ruffled by the salty wind. She wrinkled her nose, tail lashing as she surveyed the wasteland. "This is where your incompetence lands us," she scoffed, brushing sand from her arm with exaggerated care. A princess trudging through a toxic desert. Unacceptable. Marcus kept his tone even, checking his pack. "Zarketh is that way. We move now. We reach it by nightfall." He pointed inland, then gestured at a nearby viper fruit tree, its red-purple fruits glistening like jewels. "Stay away from those. They're neurotoxic. Eat one, and you're dead before you hit the sand." Vera's green eyes flicked to the tree, her lips curling in a dismissive smirk. "A Gowan's body is forged on a death world, human. Our biology laughs at your poisons." She took a step toward the tree, her claws flexing as if testing her own bravado, then stopped, her tail twitching with a hint of caution she didn't voice. Marcus's jaw tightened, but he kept his voice low. "Laugh all you want, princess, but those fruits don't care about your pedigree. Touch nothing unless I clear it." He activated his scanner, its faint beep confirming the air was safe for now. He started down the dune, boots sinking into the sand, and motioned for her to follow. Vera trailed behind, muttering about the heat, the sand, and human paranoia. "You think I need your babysitting?" she snapped, kicking a clump of sand that sparkled with faint algae glow. "Ives survived goes predators. This place is nothing." But her eyes darted to the viper fruit again, drawn to their sweet scent, her confidence a thin veil over something restless. Pride, perhaps, or a need to prove herself. Marcus glanced back, catching her gaze. "Gal's not Zora this. Keep up, and keep your claws off the plants." His words were clipped, but his steady pace betrayed a flicker of concern. Not that he'd admit it. Princess Vera trailed behind, her complaints a steady drone, about the heat, the sand, the human stench of his gear. Her black fur glistened with sweat, and her green eyes flicked restlessly to the viper fruit trees dotting the coast, their red-purple fruits glowing like forbidden gems. Marcus glanced back, catching her staring at a tree. "Don't," he warned, voice sharp. "Those fruits are neurotoxic. One bite and you're gone." He adjusted his rifle, scanning for threats, his jaw tight from her earlier dismissal. Vera scoffed, tossing her head. "Gallian blood runs stronger than your fears, soldier." Her tail flicked defiantly, but her steps faltered, her throat parched from the dry air. She licked her lips, eyes locked on a plump viper fruit, its sweet scent cutting through the salty tang of the sea. "I'm not some weakling human," she muttered, striding toward the tree. "Vera, stop!" Marcus lunged, but she was too fast. Her claws plucked a fruit, and before he could reach her, she bit into it, juice dripping down her chin. For a moment, she smirked. Then her eyes widened, pupils dilating. She staggered, claws clutching her throat, and collapsed into the sand, gasping. Marcus dropped to his knees beside her, heart pounding. "Damn it, princess!" Her fur was slick with sweat, her breathing shallow. The viper fruit's neurotoxin was fast, paralysis, then respiratory failure. He ripped open his survival kit, pulling out a portable emetic injector, its sleek design calibrated for cross-species use. "Hold on," he growled, jabbing the injector in her arm. The device hissed, delivering a fast-acting compound to force her stomach to expel the poison. Vera convulsed, her body arching as she retched, the half-digested fruit splattering onto the sand. Marcus held her steady, his hands firm but gentle, ignoring the toxic juice that stung his skin. Her breathing stabilized, but her eyes were glassy, her body trembling. The toxin's secondary effects kicked in: fever, delirium. She mumbled, voice slurred, "Mother, why? You judge me." Her claws twitched, as if reaching for something unseen, her family, perhaps, or the weight of their expectations. Marcus wiped sweat from his brow, his mind racing. The injector had bought time, but the fever was climbing, and her hallucinations were worsening. Marcus trudged through Zadis's dunes, Vera's limp form slung over his shoulder. Her feverish weight pressed against him, her shallow breaths a constant reminder of the viper fruit's poison coursing through her. The emetic injector had forced the fruit out, but the neurotoxin's secondary effects, fever, delirium, were tightening their grip. Her mumbled words, "Mother, you judge me," echoed in his mind, a glimpse into a pain she'd never admit awake. He pushed the thought aside, focusing on the path ahead. Keshvar, a ramshackle trading post 5 kilometers from the crash site, was his only hope for an antidote. The violet sun scorched the dunes, casting shadows over viper fruit trees and spike-thorn bushes, their venomous spines glinting like traps. Marcus's toxin scanner beeped, warning of airborne algae toxins from the nearby sea. He adjusted his breather mask, sweat stinging his eyes, and checked Vera's pulse, weak but steady. "Hang on, princess," he muttered, his voice rough but firm. Waiting for rescue wasn't an option. She'd be dead before help arrived. A faint trail of cargo skiff tracks led toward Keshvar, winding through the dunes. Marcus followed it, his boots sinking into sand that shimmered with toxic glow. A spike-thorn bush snagged his pant leg, its spines grazing his skin, sending a sharp sting up his calf. He cursed under his breath, yanking free, and checked Vera for scratches. Her fur was matted, her claws twitching as she murmured incoherently about expectations and failure. He didn't know her world, but the weight in her words felt heavier than her body. Keshvar appeared over a dune, a cluster of prefab domes and flickering hollow signs, bustling with Gallian traders and off-world scavengers. Marcus's scanner pinged. No immediate toxins, but the post's air carried the sharp tang of fuel and alien spices. He shifted Vera's weight, her tail limp against his back, and headed for the medical stall he'd spotted on his last mission here. The vendor, a grizzled Gallian with one ear half-chewed, eyed Vera's royal insignia and raised a brow. "Viper fruit poisoning," Marcus said, laying Vera on a cot inside the stall. "Need an antidote, fast. And hormone stabilizers, whatever works for Gallian physiology." He didn't know why he added the last part, only that her erratic behavior before the poisoning felt like more than just pride. The vendor chittered, rummaging through crates. "Antidote's pricey, human. Stabilizers, too. Rare for gallons. You got credits?" Marcus tossed a chip from his pack, his eyes never leaving Vera. Her breathing hitched, her claws scraping the cot as she muttered, "Not weak. Not theirs." The vendor handed over 2 injectors, one a clear antidote, the other a milky stabilizer. Marcus paid without haggling, his focus on the faint rise of her chest. He knelt beside her, jabbing the antidote into her arm. The injector hissed, and Vera's body tensed, a low growl escaping her throat. Marcus hesitated, then administered the stabilizer, hoping it would ease whatever was driving her delirium. Her eyes fluttered, still glassy, but her breathing steadied slightly. The vendor watched, tail flicking. "She's no ordinary Gallian, eh? Better keep her close, soldier." Marcus didn't respond, his hand lingering on Vera's arm, her fur warm under his fingers. The dunes outside loomed, and Keshvar's noise faded as he focused on her next breath, willing her to fight. The medical stall in Keshvar hummed with the faint buzz of a portable med scanner, its light casting shadows over Vera's still form on the cot. Marcus Hale sat beside her, his rifle propped against a crate, his hands resting on his knees, stained with Zorathis sand and viper fruit juice. The antidote injector had done its work. Vera's fever was breaking, her breathing steadier, though her black fur still glistened with sweat. Her green eyes, once glassy with delirium, flickered open, catching the dim glow of the stall's hollow lamp. "Human." Vera's voice was hoarse, barely a whisper, but her familiar haughty edge lingered. She tried to sit up, wincing as her claws gripped the cot's edge. "You didn't let me die." Her tail twitched, a slow, uncertain motion, as if testing her own strength. Marcus leaned forward, his voice low but warm. "Not on my watch, princess." He handed her a water pouch, his fingers brushing hers, brief but enough to send a jolt through the air. Her eyes met his, sharp and searching, no longer clouded by poison, but burning with something new, something unguarded. Vera sipped the water, her gaze never leaving him. "A Gallian princess doesn't thank her escort," she said, but her tone softened, almost teasing. "Yet you carried me through that wretched desert." She set the pouch down, her claws lingering near his hand, a silent acknowledgement of the line they'd crossed. Not just soldier in charge, but something deeper. The vendor had left them alone, the stall's curtain drawn to shield them from Keshvar's bustle. The air was thick with the scent of alien herbs and the faint tang of fuel, but to Marcus, it was Vera's presence that filled the space. Her fur, her breath, the subtle shift in her posture as she leaned closer. "Why?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "Why risk so much for me?" Marcus hesitated, his stoic mask cracking. "You're more than a mission, Vera." The words slipped out, raw and unguarded, and he didn't take them back. Her eyes widened, and for a moment, the haughty princess was gone, replaced by a woman wrestling with truths she'd buried under pride. She shifted, her tail brushing his arm, sending a shiver through him. "On Gal," she murmured, "we don't meddle with our nature. The stabilizers you gave me, they dull what's sacred." Her claws flexed, a flicker of defiance returning. "Our mating cycle, it's not a flaw to be fixed. It's who we are." Her voice trembled, caught between cultural loyalty and the pull she felt toward him, her body still warm from the poison's lingering heat. Marcus's breath caught, the weight of her words sinking in. He didn't know Gallian ways, not fully, but he saw the conflict in her eyes, duty versus desire, tradition versus trust. He reached out, his hand resting on hers, calloused fingers tracing the soft fur of her wrist. "I didn't mean to change you," he said, his voice steady but thick with feeling. "I just couldn't lose you." The space between them shrank, the stall's curtain a flimsy barrier against the world outside. Vera's tail curled around his arm, a Gallian gesture he didn't fully understand but felt in his bones. Her breath was warm against his neck, her eyes half-lidded, a silent question hanging in the air. Marcus answered with a touch, his hand sliding to her cheek. And for the first time, the soldier and the princess were just two souls, caught in the gravity of a moment neither could deny. The curtain of Keshvar's medical stall fluttered as Marcus helped Vera to her feet, her strength returning, but her movements still shaky from the viperfoot's poison. Her green eyes held his, a spark of something unspoken lingering from their touch moments ago. "We can't stay here," Marcus said, his voice steady despite the heat of her gaze. "Zarketh is still our goal. Let's move." Vera nodded, her tail brushing his arm, a Gaulian gesture that sent a shiver through him. They stepped into Keshvar's bustling streets, the air thick with fuel and spice, but a sharp wind carried a new edge, the tang of Zorth's sand, stirred by an approaching storm. Marcus's scanner beeped, warning of a sandstorm barreling across the dunes. "Trouble's coming," he muttered, slinging his rifle. "We need shelter fast." Vera's fur bristled, her claws flexing. "A storm? This planet mocks me further." But her voice wavered, her body radiating heat, not just from the desert, but from something deeper, primal. She pressed closer to Marcus, her breath quickening, eyes half-lidded. "Lead on, human," she murmured, her tone softer, almost urgent. The wind howled, whipping sand into stinging clouds. Marcus spotted a rocky outcrop a kilometer away, its shadowed, cleft, promising refuge. He grabbed Vera's hand, pulling her through the worsening storm. Sand lashed their faces, catching in Vera's fur and Marcus's breather mask. Spikethorn bushes loomed in the haze, their venomous spines swaying. But Marcus steered clear, his focus split between the path and Vera's tightening grip. They stumbled into the cave, its cool darkness a stark contrast to the storm's fury. The entrance narrowed, muffling the wind scream, and bioluminescent algae on the walls cast a faint, eerie glow. Marcus set Vera against a smooth rock, checking her for injuries. Her fur was matted, her chest heaving, but her eyes burned with an intensity that stopped him cold. "Marcus," she whispered, her voice thick, her tail curling around his wrist. He knelt beside her, his pulse racing. "You're still weak, princess. Rest." But her heat was palpable, her scent, a mix of fur and something wild, filling the cave. The viperfoot's toxins, he realized, had triggered something in her Gaulian biology, amplifying urges she'd fought to suppress. "What's happening to you?" he asked, voice low, though he suspected the answer. Vera's claws grazed his arm, not threatening, but desperate. "On Gal, our cycle is sacred," she said, her words halting raw. "The poison, it's made it stronger, faster." Her eyes locked on his, a plea beneath her pride. "I can't fight it. Not with you here." Her tail tightened, pulling him closer, and the cave's glow danced across her fur, her form both regal and vulnerable. Marcus's resolve wavered, his duty clashing with the pull of her touch. He'd sworn to protect her, not this. But her warmth, her trust, unraveled him. "Vera," he murmured, his hand finding her cheek, calloused fingers tracing her jaw. The storm raged outside, but in the cave, time slowed, their breaths sinking. She leaned into him, her lips brushing his neck, a soft growl vibrating against his skin. The world narrowed to the press of her body, the rhythm of her pulse, the silent promise they both understood. In the cave's seclusion, they surrendered to the moment, their bond forged in the heat of survival and something deeper, unspoken. The storm's roar faded, leaving only the echo of their closeness, a fragile truth in Zarades' deadly embrace. The sandstorm's roar had faded, leaving Marcus and Vera in Zarketh's bustling heart, their footsteps echoing on the polished stone of the city's medical bay. The cave's intimacy lingered in their silence, a bond forged in heat and trust, but Vera's steps were unsteady, her black fur still ruffled from Zarades' trials. Marcus supported her arm, his rifle slung low, his eyes scanning the Gaulian medics who moved with quiet efficiency. The city spires loomed outside, their bioluminescent glow a stark contrast to the dunes they'd survived. Vera's tail flicked, her green eyes sharp but shadowed. "This place reeks of politics," she muttered, her haughty tone returning, though softer, tempered by their closeness. "My father's waiting, no doubt, to parade me for that ceremony." Her voice caught on the word, a reminder of the marriage to Lord Sithin, arranged by Ambassador Tavar to bind their clans. She hadn't spoken of it since Keshvar, but Marcus felt the weight in her pause. "First, we get you checked," Marcus said, his voice calm but firm. "You're not yourself." The viper fruit's poison was gone, but her warmth, her restlessness, hadn't faded since the cave. He guided her to a med scanner, its sleek frame humming as a Gauian medic approached, her fur streaked with age. The medic's eyes narrowed, noting Vera's royal insignia. "Princess Vera, an honor." "Symptoms?" she asked, her claws tapping the scanner's controls. Vera hesitated, glancing at Marcus, her pride warring with vulnerability. "Fatigue. Heat," she admitted, her tail curling tightly around her leg. Since the storm, Marcus stood close, his hand brushing hers, a silent anchor. The scanner whirred, its light sweeping over Vera's form. The medic's ears twitched, her expression shifting from professional to stunned. "This is unexpected," she said, her voice low. "You're pregnant. A hybrid, human and Gauian. The fetus is developing rapidly, likely due to your cycle's acceleration." Vera froze, her claws digging into the cot, her eyes wide with shock. "Pregnant?" Her voice was a whisper, raw with disbelief. She turned to Marcus, her gaze searching, almost accusing. "You." Her tail lashed, but her hand found his, gripping it fiercely, a lifeline amid the chaos in her mind. Marcus's breath caught, his stoic mask cracking. "A child, theirs." The cave's moment, born of instinct and trust, had forged something permanent. "Vera," he said, his voice steady despite the storm in his chest, "we'll figure this out." His hand tightened on hers, a vow beyond duty. The medic cleared her throat, her tone cautious. "This changes things, Princess. Zora, this law may recognize the child as binding. Your betrothal to Lord Sithin." She stopped, glancing at the door, where a silver-furred figure loomed. Ambassador Tavar, Vera's father, his amber eyes blazing with barely contained fury. Ambassador Tavar's growl echoed through Zarketh's medical bay, his silver fur bristling as he loomed over Vera and Marcus. "What have you done?" he repeated, amber eyes boring into his daughter, then flicking to Marcus with a mix of disdain and fury. Vera stood defiant, her black fur still damp from the sandstorm, her hand gripping Marcus's, their hybrid child a secret, now threatening to unravel her clan's honor. The Gauian medic shrank back, her tail low, as Tavar's presence filled the room. "This ends now," Tavar snapped, gesturing to the door. "The Grand Hall. We settle this before the clans." Vera's claws flexed, but she nodded, her green eyes blazing with a mix of fear and resolve. Marcus followed, his rifle slung tight, his jaw set. The weight of their bond, and the child, pressed heavier than Zerati's dunes. The Grand Hall's towering arches glowed with bioluminescent orbs, casting light over tapestries of Gauian victories. Clan elders lined the chamber, their fur a mosaic of colors, but Clan Ironclaw's delegation stood out, dark brown pelts, led by Lord Sithin, his lean frame taut with restrained anger. His cloring glinted, a symbol of his claim to Vera, now jeoparded by her pregnancy. Tavar strode to the center, his voice commanding. "My daughter, promised to Ironclaw, has defiled our honor with this human." He spat the word, glaring at Marcus. "Explain yourself, Vera." Vera stepped forward, her tail high, voice cutting like a blade. "I carry a child, ours." She placed a hand on her abdomen, her gaze daring the room to challenge her. "Zora, this law binds us, Father. The law of binding recognizes our child above your contracts." Murmurs rippled through the elders, some nodding, others hissing. Sithin's eyes narrowed, his claws twitching, but he remained silent, his fury palpable. Marcus stood beside Vera, his human frame dwarfed by Gauian warriors yet unyielding. "I stand by her," he said, voice steady, meeting Tavar's gaze. "This wasn't planned, but it's real. Our child deserves a place here." His words, blunt and human, sparked a snarl from an Ironclaw elder, but Vera's hand tightened on his, a silent vow. Tavar's ears flattened, his scars stark under the orb's glow. You dare claim a place in our clans, outsider? You, who know nothing of our ways. He turned to the elders, voice rising. The marriage to Scythian strengthens our alliance. This abomination threatens all we've built. Scythian stepped forward, his voice cold. The human taints our bloodline. The marriage must proceed. A female elder, her white fur streaked with age, raised a claw, silencing the room. The law of binding is clear, she said, her voice resonant. A child, proven legitimate, supersedes contracts. But legitimacy requires proof. Her eyes fixed on Marcus. The right of valor. Prove your worth, human, or the marriage holds. Vera's breath hitched, her eyes darting to Marcus. The right of valor, trials of spirit, body, and soul, was a grueling Gaulian ritual rarely offered to outsiders. Marcus nodded, his face unreadable but his grip on Vera's hand firm. I'll do it, he said, voice low but resolute. Tavar's lip curled, but he said nothing, his silence a challenge. Scythian's gaze burned, his clan's honor now tied to Marcus's failure. As the elders dispersed to prepare the veil of trials, Vera pulled Marcus close, her whisper fierce. You don't have to do this. Her tail brushed his arm, a flicker of fear beneath her pride. Marcus met her eyes, his voice soft but unwavering. For you, for us, I do. The Grand Hall's weight pressed around them, a storm of politics and tradition brewing. The veil of trials stretched before Zarketh's spires, a sunken arena of red Zora, this sand ringed by ancient Gaulian obelisks, their bioluminescent runes pulsing under a violet sky. Marcus Hale stood at the center, his human frame dwarfed by the towering stones, his breath steady despite the weight of countless Gaulian eyes, elders, warriors, and Vera, her black fur catching the glow as she watched from stone dais. Ambassador Tavar loomed nearby, his silver mane rigid, amber eyes cold with judgment. A clan Ironclaw elder, her dark brown fur streaked with ritual paint, intoned the rite's opening words, the rite of valor begins. Spirit first. Face your truth, human, or falter. Vera's gaze met Marcus's, her tail still, her green eyes fierce with unspoken faith. You are enough, she'd whispered before he descended, her claws grazing his hand, a tether against the storm ahead. Now, alone in the arena, Marcus faced a low altar, its surface etched with swirling patterns. A Gaulian shaman, cloaked in white, offered a vial of shimmering liquid. Mind's veil, a Gaulian elixir said to summon one's deepest fears and truths. Drink, she commanded, her voice echoing off the obelisks. Marcus took the vial, its warmth seeping into his palm, and downed it in one swallow. The world blurred. The arena dissolved, replaced by a battlefield. Earth's scorched plains, a mission gone wrong years ago. Smoke choked the air, and his squad screams pierced the haze. Private Connors, his face half-burned, reached for him, voice breaking. Why'd you let us die, Hale? Marcus staggered, his rifle slipping from his hands, guilt clawing his chest. He'd failed them, hesitated, misjudged, and their blood stained his memory. The vision shifted, and Vera appeared, her fur matted, eyes lifeless, sprawled in Zora this sand. You couldn't save me, she whispered, her voice a knife. Marcus's knees buckled, his fear of losing her, now so real with their child, surging like poison. The visions deepened, a future unformed, a child, half human, half Gowan, staring with accusing eyes. You don't belong here, it said, its voice echoing Tavar's disdain. Marcus's breath hitched, the weight of his outsider's status crushing him. An intruder in Vera's world, unworthy of their bond. The mind's veil twisted his pain, each memory a blade, urging him to break. But Marcus clenched his fists, his nails biting his palms, grounding him. No, he growled, voice raw. Connors wasn't here. His death was a scar, not a chain. Vera lived, her strength a fire he'd fight for. The child, their child, was a bridge, not a burden. He forced his eyes open, the visions wavering as he faced them. Not as failures, but as truths he'd survived. "I'm still standing," he said, the words a defiance against the veil's grip. The battlefield faded, Vera's corpse dissolved, and the child's gaze softened, its form vanishing into mist. The veil of trials snapped back, the obelisk's runes glowing brighter. Marcus stood, sweat-soaked, chest heaving, but his eyes were clear. The shaman nodded, her expression unreadable. "The spirit endures," she declared, her voice carrying to the crowd. Vera's tail flicked, a spark of pride breaking her stoic mask, though her claws betrayed her worry. Tavar's ears twitched, his silence grudging, while the Ironclaw elder's gaze hardened, already plotting the next trial. Marcus stepped from the altar, his legs heavy but his resolve ironclad. Vera met him at the arena's edge, her hand brushing his arm, her whisper fierce. "You faced it for us." He nodded, too raw to speak, the memory of her lifeless form still lingering. A Gaulian shaman, cloaked in white, raised her arms. "The rite of valor continues. Body now, prove your strength, human or fall." Marcus stood at the arena's center, sweat drying from the mental trial, his muscles taut under his worn combat gear. His rifle was forbidden here. The trial demanded raw skill. Across the sand, Varkes of Ironclaw prowled, his golden fur rippling, ritual scars glinting on his chest. Varkes' spiked tail rings scraped the ground, his claws flexing, long, curved, honed for Gaulian martial arts. "You're no match, human," Varkes snarled, his voice a low chitter. "Ironclaw's honor will bury you." Marcus met his gaze, steady, his calloused hands open but ready. "Let's find out," he said, voice calm but edged. Vera's tail flicked, her whisper lost to the wind, but her eyes shouting faith. She'd gripped his arm before the trial, her voice fierce, "Fight like you fought for me." Now, Marcus centered himself, recalling Gaulian combat briefings, speed and claws over brute force. Varkes charged, a blur of gold, claws slashing from Marcus's chest. Marcus dodged, sand spraying, his human reflexes pushed their limit. He ducked a second swipe, grabbing Varkes' wrist and twisting, using the Gowan's momentum to throw him off balance. Varkes recovered, tail lashing and lunged, claws grazing Marcus's arm, drawing blood. The crowd hissed, but Marcus didn't flinch. He adapted, circling, watching Varkes' tail for tells. Gaulian fighters used it for balance. When Varkes spun, tail sweeping low, Marcus leaped, tackling the warrior's midsection. They hit the sand, rolling, Marcus's fists hammering Varkes' ribs while dodging snapping jaws. Varkes roared, claws raking Marcus's back, pain searing, but Marcus locked an arm around Varkes' neck, squeezing his endurance a human edge Gowans lacked. The obelisk's glow flared, as if judging. Varkes' struggle slowed, his breath ragged. Marcus tightened his hold, whispering yield. Varkes' eyes burned, but his body sagged, claws dropping. The shaman stepped forward, her voice sharp. "Enough. The body prevails." The crowd murmured, some in awe, others in anger. Varkes staggered to his feet, glaring but bowing, honor-bound. Tavar's ears flattened, his silence a storm, while Clan Ironclaw's elders exchanged tense glances, their champion bested. Marcus rose, blood trickling down his arm, chest heaving. The rite of valor ends. Soul now, bind your spirit, human, or be cast out. Vera's tail curled tightly, her claws grazing the stone, a silent prayer for Marcus. Before the trial, she pressed her forehead to his, whispering, "Your soul is ours, mine, our child's. Show them." Now, Marcus faced a raised dais where the soul stone rested, a fist-sized orb of polished crystal, swirling with inner light, said to channel Gaulian ancestors. The shaman lifted the stone, its glow casting shadows across Marcus's scarred face. "Kneel," she commanded, "and let the clan see you." Marcus knelt, the sand cool against his knees, his breath steady despite the weight of judgment. The shaman pressed the soul stone to his chest, its warmth spreading like fire through his veins. The veil faded, and a void enveloped him, alive with whispers, ancient Gauian voices, their tones both welcoming and wary. A figure emerged, a spectral Gauian with Vera's green eyes, her fur shimmering. "Why do you claim us, human?" she asked, voice echoing with the clan's history. Marcus's heart pounded, the stone's light pulsing with his pulse. "For Vera," he said, voice firm. "For our child. For a place where we belong." The figure tilted her head, and vision swirled. Vera's defiance in the grand hall, their cave embrace, the child's rapid growth in Vera's womb. Pain followed, his squad's deaths, his fear of failing Vera, the clan's scorn. But Marcus held fast, his love for Vera a tether, their child a bridge between worlds. "I'm not Gauian," he said, "but my soul fights for her, for them." The ancestors' eyes softened, and the void shifted, revealing a circle of spectral Gauans, their claws raised in acceptance. The soul stone flared, its light flooding the veil, visible to all. Marcus gasped, back in the arena, the stone still warm against his chest. The shaman's ears twitched, her voice solemn. The ancestors see him. The soul is bound. The crowd exhaled, some in awe, others in grudging silence. Vera's tail flicked, a sob caught in her throat, her pride now unrestrained. Tavar's jaw tightened, his silence heavy, while Clan Ironclaw's elders exchanged glances, their opposition wavering. Marcus rose, the soul stone's glow fading, his eyes finding Vera's. She descended the tears, her claws gentle on his face, her whisper fierce. "You're ours now." Her touch lingered, their bond sealed before the clan, the veil's obelisks dimming as if in reverence. The shaman's gaze held Marcus, the trials complete, but the weight of their future pressed close. Zarketh's grand hall hummed with the weight of history, its bioluminescent orbs casting soft light over Gauian tapestries that chronicled clan triumphs. The air was thick with anticipation as Marcus Hale and Princess Vera stood at the chamber's center, their hands clasped, a quiet defiance against the sea of furred faces, elders, warriors, and diplomats. Vera's black fur gleamed, her green eyes blazing with pride, her tail steady for the first time in days. Marcus, still bruised from the rite of valor, stood tall, his human frame a stark contrast to the Gauian throng, yet his presence commanded respect. Their unborn child, a human Gauan hybrid, bound them closer than any ritual. Ambassador Tavar faced them, his silver mane catching the orb's glow, amber eyes softened but still sharp. The trials, Marcus's mental resilience, physical victory over Varkes, and spiritual communion with the Soul Stone, had silenced most doubters, even Clan Ironclaw, whose elders sat subdued. Lord Sithan absent, his marriage claim dissolved. A white-furred female elder, her voice resonant, addressed the hall. "The rite of valor is complete. Marcus Hale, human, has proven spirit, body, and soul. The law of binding holds. The child binds him to Vera, to us." Tavar stepped forward, his scars stark, his voice low but clear. "I judged you harshly, human," he said, eyes on Marcus. "You've earned your place in my daughter's heart." A murmur rippled through the crowd, some nodding, others silent. Vera's claws tightened on Marcus's hand, her breath catching. Tavar's gaze shifted to her, softer now. "Vera, you've chosen boldly. Led our clan as you love, without fear." Her tail flicked, a spark of autonomy igniting, her voice now her own in clan affairs. The elder raised a claw, formalizing the bond. "By Zora this law, Marcus and Vera are one, their child a bridge between worlds." The hall erupted in chitters, some grudging, others warm. Marcus exhaled, the weight of trials lifting, replaced by a new duty, fatherhood, partnership. Vera leaned into him, her whisper fierce. "We did this, Marcus, together." Her hand rested on her abdomen, their child a promise of unity. Beyond the hall, word reached Marcus of a military envoy awaiting him. A promotion, a new role bridging human and Gauian forces, born of his valor. He nodded, accepting, his soldier's heart now tied to a broader peace. Vera, emboldened, spoke of clan reforms, her voice carrying weight where once it was stifled. The grand halls, orbs dimmed, signaling the ceremony's end, but outside, Vriza's violet sky stretched wide, a canvas for their future. As they stepped into the city, Vera's tail brushed Marcus's arm, a Gallian gesture now his own. Their child, growing swiftly, would know both Earth's grit and Gao's fire, a symbol of what two worlds could forge. The sands of Zorathis whispered behind them, no longer a threat but a witness to their beginning. A family, a hope, a deeper understanding between souls and species.